Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two wonderful poets with us today, Edmund Berrigan and Phoebe MacAdams. Edmund will read first and then Phoebe. Edmund Berrigan is most recently the author of More Gone from City Lights in 2019. Berrigan was the guest blogger for the Poetry Foundation's Harriet blog in March of 2019 and has had essays included in the collections Lovers of My Orchard, Writers and Artists on Frank O'Hara, 2017, and Joe Brainerd's Art, Edinburgh University Press, 2019. He is a co-editor with Anselm Berrigan, Alice Notley, and Nick Sturm of Get the Money, Collected Prose 1961, 1983 by Ted Berrigan, City Lights 2022. He lives in Brooklyn, New York. Here's a marvelous poet, Edmund Berrigan.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry and Jennifer, and thanks for having me. Is my audio coming through okay? You can hear me? Okay, excellent. So in a classic poet maneuver, I'm going to read a bunch of short poems and then one longer piece at the end. A lot of these short poems don't have titles, so the space between poems will be the title. And yeah, here we go. Oh, tiny cells bonded with electric charges that turn invisible, beautiful space station mornings. I keep being jealous of people who don't exist. All the times I've crossed the Manhattan Bridge, trapped in a grid, but strangely relieved to return to all the energy, little boxes full of totems that make me feel at home. Fight for it every minute, but every minute is proved to belong to no one. Each claim is valid. We all become each other. Whatever animates one comes into another in fragments. We slowly become each other's gestures, look, impulses, beyond consciousness and cognition. The longer the life, the more lives are accumulated and ultimately redistributed in tiny breaths. I've slept with cramps on a park bench in Querétaro, children watching in wonder. In planes, trains, buses, and cars. I've slept on the ground and woke up in the rain, under and above ground with men, women, children, animals. I've slept through my stop and walked home through the dark streets of Brooklyn's Chinatown, fish stands finally shut away at 3 a.m. I've slept in my dreams and while awake. I've slept in my wounds, waking up in my veins with blood gushing. The telling gestures and lip curls when people internalize and try to self-correct that indicate that you to them are just gusts of a previous dilemma they haven't quite exercised. And you will play the little demon on their shoulder, whispering about delicacies of nuanced perception. Died in a backbone, little scraps scarred. The world is open to those on the top deck who no longer require this information. Dear Dad, the circumstance of dreaming holds us together while the express train pounds the nearby tunnel, hanging glib remarks about self-censorship I was also thinking about the great escapism and our long hours of public service. This one has a title, which is 13 to 16, contemplating that particular age range and the things that happen. The danger of sentimentality as it looks lovingly away from larger perspectives. We had it all, but only looked at some of it, then decided that sum the total, divided by perseverance, squared a cathedral fractal wound. Other times, why am I here? How did we come to disrepair? That car made a flip in multiple locations. Hearts raced. What am I doing here now with you? And which part of the emotion are we looking through? This one is written after the artwork of Rosemary Mayer, and it's called Bold Leaps from Canvas to Fabric. I miss my future. It's hard to say which one, not the one that's now. I've always wanted to expect versions of this. It's the one I didn't expect that was starting to form. I can see it disappearing. That's the one I'll miss. Do I really need to describe it? There was more purple than I'm accustomed to. Suddenly stretchers were no longer required, and the fabric just floated off of thin spindles attached to light chains. The delicate forms were more unique and beautiful, shapes from shapelessness, light, delicate, and translucent. Thunderstorm. I heard gunfire in the alley last night. 2 tentative shots, and then 4 successive, more intended ones. The slow perusing sound of cop cars cruising the street followed, and eventually a constant circling of helicopters put me to sleep. I woke a few hours later to bright lightning flashes that were very close, followed by an immense explosion of thunder, accompanied by a persistent pounding rain. When I woke again, it was a bright, quiet morning. I lay in bed and read the news, but there was no indication of either event. This one, I think I wrote it in 2012. It's the kind of thing that you write and then you forget about for 12 years. And I found it recently, and now I'm reading it to you. It is only for Allen Ginsberg. It is only when I speak to you that I am afraid for my life. It is only now that I understand the symbolism of your death. It is only a lonely stroll with a tramp on a tarp. It is only a fishing hook caught in my cheek. It is only the flesh torn off from my fingers. It is only an augmented cord that troubles us so. It is only a beginning, and then nothing. It is only a cloud which resembles bloated laughter. It is only a dissolving centipede. It is only a few raindrops on a blue orchid. It is only the bluff of power that frightens us. It is only a war for that power, dominated by the interests of the wealthy. It is only an ending to a dream you'd have preferred. It is only a decapitated soldier. It is only a tax return. It is only my artificial father. It is only an unrecognizable truth. It is only this great height that allows the ocean to seem frozen. It is only my rib cage hurtling through the troposphere. It is only now that I forgive you for refusing me. It is only now that I forgive myself for hearing the wrong story. It is only now that I dream of another life. It is only now that these dreams pile up before me. And this will be the last piece. It's a few pages. And I wrote it, right when we were all sort of emerging from COVID and traveling again. I went to Tulum, Mexico to sit on the beach for a week and just found myself sort of writing through the past, through different memories, isolated memories. And my dad, Ted Berrigan, had a form that he used called Things to Do. Things to do in the closet, things to do on speed, 10 things I do every day is another one. So this is things to do on the Lower East Side in the late 70s and 80s. I better sip my coffee for this one. Walk into a strong wind with mom and feel like we're about to be blown away. Hear the way Dolphy says, chomp. What's up, chomp? Hear Leroy say, hey, all right, in his deep vocal tone, after your squeaky, high-pitched voice is said, hi, Leroy. Sit on the stoop with Dad. When an attractive woman has passed by, he says, look at her, Eddie. Woo, woo. You giggle, but this really has nothing to do with you. Make friends with Min and Linda, two women from Minnesota who live down the hall. They have a pet rat named Jenny Anydots. One day, a rat appears in our apartment. We ask them if it's Jenny, but they say no. So Dad sends us out. We walk around the block, but Mom is concerned to leave him alone too long. We return, and poet Hannah Wieners is standing there, giggling and sweeping. Dad has tried to kill the rat with fire and water. It is currently being slow chased around the leg of the kitchen table by the cat, but the cat will not attack it. There's a knock on the door. It's Min and Linda. We can't find Jenny. They hold out a nacho chip and say, here, Jenny, Jenny. And the rat runs out from under the oven, jumps into Linda's hands, and they leave. The apartment smells like burnt paper, and there is a puddle of water on the floor. Tell Dolphy you're a poet. He asks you to recite a poem. You are shy and say you don't remember any. He pointedly recites a multi-verse rhyming ballad about the virtues of being a redhead versus being bald. He completes it by pointing at you, smiling, and walking away. Hear the neighborhood kid Lawrence as he yells, and some, come down, at the third floor window. Sometimes the downstairs neighbor Byron will do the same. Byron introduces you to porno and to rap music. He stays up till midnight listening to WBLS and tapes the programs, playing them for you later. DJ Red Alert going berserk, zerk, zerk. BSK, we're making that green. People always saying, what the hell does that mean? You start taking guitar lessons at the 3rd Street Music School, which for some reason is on 11th Street. The teacher is kind, patient, and you enjoy the lessons. One day, Byron invites you over to watch a porno on VHS, and you decline because you have a guitar lesson. You leave the apartment and walk towards First Avenue. Byron is coming the other way, pointing at you with one hand and cackling into the other. You are a kid, so you can talk to all neighbors with impunity. You're sitting outside in the restaurant downstairs with a neighbor, Adam Roth, a musician. He looks up and says, "There's Thurston," and calls out, "Hey, Thurston." A tall guy turns around and waves. "That's Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth. That might be the whole band with him." You don't know who these people are, and you don't care. Adam offers to give you an ice cream bar that's in his freezer if you go write a poem and show it to him. You agree, knowing that you have already written several poems, so you wait a certain amount of time, grab one of those poems, show it to him, and then return victorious with ice cream. When you see Adam later in life being filmed for a music video, he tells the person next to him that he once got you to write a poem by offering you ice cream. When you see Thurston later in life, he tells you that he used to see your dad talking to admiring young poets on the street corner near Jum's Spa and thought that he was a cult leader. Visit Tompkins Square Park. Head to the playground near Avenue B. Crawl under the turtle sculpture with your friend. Two older boys come in behind on either side and block your escape. One produces a lighter and slowly burns you on the thumb. Then, horrified by his own actions, he backs away and lets you out. Walk on 10th Street with your friend John to go buy some toys, but instead get mugged by two older boys. They ask for your money, but you don't give it to them. "Oh, he's hard," one of them says, and then grabs you by the throat. Your friend says, "Give it to him." So you do. When John tells his mother, he gets down on his knees, afraid she won't believe him. You call your mother. Then John's mother calls the police. They don't really say anything, so Mom says, "Tell them something. They're boys without fathers." They say, "Go to the Life Cafe if it happens again." But it won't happen again, and you didn't have a chance to run away. Be afraid to go past Avenue A, but do it anyway because that's where John lives. One time when you visit him, an older boy offers to shake your hand, but then reaches around and tears the Lee patch halfway off of the back of your jeans. You run away, but realizing you can't escape, you decide to tear the patch off fully and just give it to him. If you collected a certain amount of patches, you could send away for something. It must have been something good. Visit John on another day, just past Avenue B on 10th Street. Little Stephen and Clarence Clemens are there, filming the video for Artists Against Apartheid. Little Stephen addresses the flock of children. "Help fight drugs on this block." He says, "But I don't live on this block," you reply. "Well, help fight drugs on your block," he says. Watch yourself grow older. When you walk down St. Mark's Place to First Avenue, a trio of drug dealers are there and greet everyone with the words "sense, sense, sensimilia." Then one realizes you are a kid and apologizes to you. "Sorry, Shorty." This happens several times until he finally asks you your name. "Eddie." "Eric?" "Don't do drugs, Eric. Don't be like me." You become regular hello buddies after this, but to him you are Eric. Watch your friend Roger's dad get embarrassed one day because you say hi to him while he's buying Sensimilia from another one of the trio. Grow weary of bougie eats. There is a period of your life where the only food you are interested in is an English muffin with butter and jelly, either from Odessa or Leshko's. Barbara Barg says to you, "But you have to have some nutrients." So you order a chocolate milk. Bump into Allen Ginsberg, Joanne Kiger, and Donald Gurovich on the way to a movie with your folks. Decide to skip the movie and go to the Jaffa Cafe with them instead. Allen is sitting opposite you. "How's your sex life?" he asks. "I don't have one." "Why not?" "I have no money and no privacy." "How's yours?" "Well, I can't get it up like I used to." "Aw, you're just in a slump," you say encouragingly. "No, I'm old," he says. He draws Buddha on a napkin and gives it to you. Be tasked with retrieving Philip Whalen from Alan's apartment and escorting him to dinner. You and your brother arrive and do so, Philip is going blind, and as you walk down 2nd Avenue together, he looks at signs across the street, taking his glasses on and off, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. You do this on another occasion, alone. Before you can ring the bell, Peter Orlovsky comes out, recognizing you. Berrigan, right? Yes. Do you still play the guitar? Yes, I do. What about the mandolin? No. Banjo? No. Zither? No. Hammered dulcimer? No. You should take those up, he says, and he breezes out the door. Play ball in the street with Lawrence, because Tompkins Square Park is full of muggers, junkies, homeless people. Play wiffle ball at various locations till the ball hits a window and everyone runs away. Play Nerf football until interrupted by the inevitable shout of "Car!" or when the ball is thrown into the fence yard of the Little Missionary Day School. The old woman who runs the school gleefully tears out chunks of stuffing before tossing it back in punishment for your transgression. Be in a Rolling Stones video. You can see the crowd gathered around from your apartment window as Mick Jagger stands smoking and strutting, looking cool on a nearby stoop. Dad sends Anselm out with a signed copy of So Going Around Cities to trade for an autograph. He does not get one, but accidentally ends up in a shot in the video where Keith Richards is walking down the street behind him. Anselm has upstaged him, partly by being in the foreground, and partly by clearly not giving a shit that he's in a Rolling Stones video. Go to an engagement party on Avenue A and find out that Karen Allen is there. Dad brings her over to chat with you and your brother in your booth. Were you scared in the part of the movie where the snake was coming out of the corpse's mouth? She replies, no, it was just special effects. You feel that she isn't really giving your question the proper attention, but you are in a daze, and she is being very nice and gives you both her autograph. Walk down Avenue A with Anselm and get approached by a woman who asks you if you want to be in a movie. No, says Anselm, confiding as we walk away. We don't know what kind of movie it is. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I just love your writing. Those early ones are epiphanies, perceptions, and there's just an effortlessness within your writing. And there's a truthfulness and a sense of reality, the Lower East Side and the people that you're around, and the humor. I like the humor, and you're real good at accents too, the way other people talk. But, it's poetry history. It's family history. It's your history. And I'm just so pleased to listen to your poetry. Just, you're not doing some artificial narrative, and you're just telling the truth that's within you and what you remember or what you go through and what you see. So I'm so appreciative of that. Ginsberg, as you may know, he once said that the base of poetry is candor. And that's what I sense from within you too, and what I hear. So thank you for such a enlightening reading, and I just really love it. Could you talk a little bit about when you wrote your first poem?
Yeah. Actually, that was way back when I was 8 years old, I think. I was in, my household was full of poets, and poets would come over and visit all the time. And my parents, occasionally taught, but didn't really have other jobs. So writing was a household activity. And I think what happened is a few times when my mom was writing, she just had me sit with her and we went line for line. And I liked it enough that she bought me a notebook for my birthday in 1982. August 3rd, 1982, which I still have, and I wrote some poems in it on my own. And then on and off I would write poems and otherwise just sort of be a child. And then when I was 16, one night I watched an episode of Quantum Leap where they had a portrayal of Jack Kerouac in the episode. And it was really bad, but I was sitting next to a bookcase full of Jack Kerouac books. And again, my mom had bought me like a blank notebook. So I went out walking one night and I wrote, 4 or 5 really short poems, walked from the East Village to the West Village. And I decided I was going to be full-time from then on.
So, sometimes I ask people, maybe I don't need to ask you this, but one question I ask people is what attracted you to the poetry form, or was it just inherent within you?
Well, honestly, on the one level, it's what people around me were doing. And when you're a kid, you do things to get attention. So there was some of that, but I also just enjoyed it. And I understood, it made sense on the level of imagination. And it still does, for a number of reasons, the reading I picked today, I wanted to be sort of very open and, I didn't know who my audience was going to be. But I also, I have a lot of writing that's just about putting words next to each other and making sounds that could be considered obscure. But on some level, for me, it's just as honest as saying something coherent and clear. There's so much comfort in what we know and recognizing what we know. But but life is full of mysteries that we never solve. So I also feel like it's okay to say things to people that they won't understand. That also comes out of writing from my childhood, where the impulse is to write first and understand later. Yeah,
I like that too. I like to hear the sounds that words generate bumping into each other or opening up from each other. I love that too. This is the motion picture home in Woodland Hills. And, people here have worked in front of or behind the movies on another subject matter from poetry. Could you tell us some of your favorite movies of all time?
I wasn't expecting that. There are so many to choose from. Let's see. I'm a fan of Jim Jarmusch, and when the movie Dead Man came out, and there was a character named William Blake, and one of the antagonists says, "Are you William Blake?" And he says, "Yes. Have you read my poetry?" And then he pulls out a gun and shoots them. That was I like that a lot in my 20s, at least.
I love that.
There was a Harry Smith exhibit at the Whitney Museum this past fall, and I love his experimental films and animations. That stuff is just wild. He was a wild man. And so many other kind of movies. Anything Willem Dafoe is in is usually a pretty good watch.
Well, I love Jim Jarmusch too. I love Ghost Dog, and I love Patterson. But he is a cinema poet for sure. And I like Coffee and Cigarettes. That took him 18 years. Those little short segments. Right.
Yeah, he was. He went to Columbia and he took classes with Kenneth Koch and Ron Padgett. And Ron Padgett's poems make up most of the poems in Patterson. So yeah, there's a lot of connection there.
Yeah. Well, it's really been a thrill for us to have you on, and it's just nice meeting you and learning about your growing up in your family and on the Lower East Side. And, I love your poetry, Eddie. So thank you very much. And we're going to go on to a woman who knew your dad and mom and you when you were little, and your brother. So thank you very much, Eddie Berrigan.
Thank you so much.
Phoebe MacAdams was born and raised in New York City, but has lived mostly in California. She moved to LA in 1986 with the poets James Cushing, the late Holly Prado, and Harry Northup. She is a founding member of Cahuenga Press, now including Jeanette Clout. She taught English at Roosevelt High in Boyle Heights until her retirement in 2011. She has published 7 books of poetry, the last 5 with Cahuenga Press, including in 2016, her new and selected volume, The Large Economy of the Beautiful. In 2017, Beyond Broke published Every Bird Helps, a cancer journal. She lives in Pasadena with her husband, Ron Ozuna. Here's a luminous poet, Phoebe MacAdams.
Eddie, that was wonderful. And I remember standing on the corner of Gem's Spa with Ted and talking. So that poem brought back so many memories. It was wonderful. Thank you for that. And thank you, Harry and Jennifer and the Creative Chaos team. Edmund, or Eddie, I guess it is. It's a pleasure to be reading with you. And I'm going to start this reading with something for you, which I told you about before we started. In the 1970s, I lived in Bolinas, California, up north near San Francisco, with my first husband, Louis MacAdams. Bolinas is a small coastal town north of SF on the other side of Mount Tamalpais. It was a community of poets. Us, Joanne Kiger, who was also mentioned in your poem, Bill Berkson, Tom Clark, Bob Creeley, and others. Before Christmas in 1971, your mom and dad, Ted Berrigan and Alice Notley, both well-known and much beloved poets, came to stay with us for a while. I was in my 20s, and my son, Ocean, was a baby, just not even a year old. Ted and Alice were friends whom we'd known for many years, first on the Lower East Side in New York, before we were married. They stayed in a big studio room overlooking the ocean behind our house. It was a wonderful time. And for Christmas, Ted gave me this big envelope. I don't know if you can see this. It's hard to see. Gave me this big envelope. I have kept it as a treasure all these years. And when I told Harry about it, he suggested I read some of it. Ted said it was his Christmas present to me, and I'm going to share some of it. So here we go. 12/24/71. Phoebe, for Christmas and all the rest of the time too, this year I give these presents to you. 1, everything I know, it goes like this. You don't have to do anything ever you don't want to do, and you can do anything you want to anytime. Since those are the facts, you can do anything. Just want to be doing anything you find yourself doing, or stop. Nobody has authority of any kind over anyone else. You are your own and your only ultimate authority. And present number 2, I give you these. For Christmas, for you and Ocean, that was my son. So they're partly for Louis too. Alas, for money, you'll have to go buy them yourself this time. Next time, hopefully I'll get that pleasure, but not this penniless year. Buy these and label them from me anytime. For you and Ocean, a real old-time Mother Goose, and not the baboon Dr. Seuss. Go to some old bookstore. Every baby boy in the world needs a mommy to sing him the stories of the tribe. He needs to sing. He needs you to sing first, happily, and for joy, not to teach. Then he'll sing too. Sing early. Sing always. The songs of all our grandmas, daddies, us, not new versions, though Rudolph's fine, but Hickory Dickory Dock, which grows up to be Annabelle Lee, and Dark as a Dungeon way down in the mine. 3 Bears, The Little Pigs, The Big Bad Wolf, The Gingerbread House. Not TV, though it's okay, but first from you, with love, in play, every day. They never forget your sons that you did that, sang them everything they know. And for now life, and now time, go find all the books of Ruth Krauss. And if you have to hire detectives even, they are the ones that sing in the blood. And what songs they have in them, these songs are good. This is a book called A Hole is to Dig, which is her most famous book. It's wonderful. It's a book of definitions for young kids. A sermon, my goodness, but it's one I can give for you. You already know it all, but you've too much to do. Do nothing more. Look at the stars like Alice and the flowers like Don and Phil. Not for wisdom, but to show off, to see more. Herbs are great, like cookies, but flowers are magic. And I'll tell you one thing for sure. Almost nothing in books is true. Only the music is wise in a book. Only the singer is anything like true. Everything is good to do. Those who make what they do all day sing in your heart when you're near them. They have ways you can use. They ain't right. They're okay. And then this goes on, and there's a lot about Bolinas and the people who lived in Bolinas, but that I'm not going to read. And then there's personal stuff. But I thought, Edmund, that I would love to read that for you and for all of us. And now I'm going to read a little bit from the first book of poems I wrote called Sunday. And this was published in Bolinas by Tombuctoo Press. And I'm going to read a couple of very early poems from it that were written about the same time in the early 1970s. And I'm going to start with a poem called John's Reading. The John in this is John Ashbery. And as I said, Bolinas was on the other side of Mount Tamalpais, and you have to drive over this very windy road to get to San Francisco. And so this was an evening that we spent in San Francisco. The Bobby in this piece refers to Bobby Louise Hawkins, who was Bob Creeley's wife. Joanne is Joanne Kiger. Gerard is Gerard Malanga, who is a poet and a photographer who lives in New York. And Michael is Michael McClure, no longer with us, a San Francisco poet. John's Reading. I was listening to a line of words. I had opened all the doors and windows, and the words were coming through, becoming walls, floor, ceiling, and chair I was sitting on. I lay down and rolled over and drifted off and came back, sat up, listening. I was thinking about New York and put my feet up, and still the words were coming, and again I opened, listening. Later at the party, I was still listening, only feeling uncomfortable, so I got a little drunk and arranged some walls. We had been talking earlier in the car about how hard it is to be naked in front of strangers. I was wearing a long purple print dress with a low neckline. Bobby commented that it would be an easy party to leave, and that made us all feel better. Then I was talking to Gerard. He didn't remember coming into our house dressed in white and meditating on the rug. I didn't believe that act anyway, and he had given up TM, and the curl in his lip was back, and he was tough and naughty and ambitious again. Thank heavens. I was worried he might get cancer. I didn't tell him that. He went to get a strawberry for my wine, and I remembered that he was Italian and Catholic, and suddenly I hoped he was taking care of himself. Then we were talking of firewood in Bolinas and thieves. John said he didn't like the feeling of hot lips. He said he was afraid of getting burnt. He was passing a cold joint. He smiled a hideous smile and walked away, the line of words inside him. Michael put his hand on my stomach and asked me when Louis was to return. I looked for a while into his tender eyes. And then he and Bobby were talking in an amazingly articulate fashion about everything that had just happened. She was wearing a brown dress and sweater, brown hose, and her costly fur coat. Joanne was wearing a bluish dress, sandals, many elegant shawls, and 2 exquisite rings of ruby, pearl, and diamond. We had bought our dresses at the same store, and then I stopped listening and we were running down the stairs, laughing. Michael said he was a French restaurant. We got in the car and ate burritos over the hill. Bobby drove. Bobby and Joanne were talking, but I was tired, so I was looking out at the stars. And the second Bellina's poem is called Bellina's Journal. And for much of the year in Bellina's, it rains. 3rd day of rain, more storms coming in, peas staked, weeds pulled around the spinach and lettuce. The losses come in with the storms and bleak weather. We keep going, hermetically sealed with a book somewhere. A large portion of the town collapses with the flu. Is our health a dead man? This is solved by the explorers who ride across the gap on a well-armed aimed dart and return with health. This is a fair trade, but oh God, have I fallen in love with a shadow? I slip away with a living shade and fade out of difficulty. Will I disappear completely? The ruinous weather continues. I stay inside and restore myself with a holiday so I can offer you a cup of tea. There are battles raging about town. Sometimes someone brushes up against me, dressed in full battle regalia. I say I prefer tea and hot chocolate. And also, I remember when yes meant no and no meant yes. It was confusing then, too. Now, I look at the treetops, swaying in the appreciative breeze. Bellina's. I'm going to read now a few more recent poems, and some of them are from this is my selected book called, I don't know if you can see that, The Large Economy of the Beautiful. And this is published by Cahuenga Press, and the cover is a picture of sandhill cranes. My husband and I are both birders, and my husband is a wonderful bird photographer. This is the title poem of that book, The Large Economy of the Beautiful. I am wearing my birding hat and crazy paraphernalia, binos and bottles, little notebooks and pens as cars whiz by on Highway 1. Today I have learned that Syrinx, nymph, beloved by Pan, is also the throat muscle and cartilage of bird song. The black skimmer moves along the top of the water, trolling for fish. California cormorants stand on the sand, drying their wings. Willet, whimbrel, dowitcher, and plover, yellowfeet, redbills, great blue, snowy white. At night, the shapes of birds move differently. Wings calling us to rise from our daily difficulties and sing ourselves into form. And this is another poem about birding, and it references fly-ins and fly-outs. This is what we went up to Mercer to look at the snow geese, the thousands of snow geese that migrate through there. And at night, the geese fly into a wetland area. And when they stand in the wetland, they are safe from the coyotes who won't go into the water. So they fly in for the night, and in the morning they all fly out to forage in the fields around the wetlands. And this part of California is subject to what's called Tule fog, which is a particularly thick fog that comes in. Snow geese at Merced. We drive 4 hours north to Merced to the National Wildlife Refuge to see the snow geese. We check into the Best Western, unpack, and head out. Geese overhead for the fly-in at sunset. Landing in the middle of the wetlands and shallow water, safe from coyotes at night. Thousands of geese spread out over the water as the sun turns gold at the horizon. Next day, we're up at 5 a.m., skies clear of Thule fog, stars as we drive in the dark, then first light to the east. 5 minutes before the entrance, we drive into a thick wall of fog, creep into the gate, hear the geese, see nothing, and drive slowly around the water as the sun comes up, fog beginning to lift. Towards the end of the loop, we see a big flock of geese in the water. Suddenly, they all rise up together, 2,000-3,000. They fly out over our car. Thousands of flapping and honking white geese, a great cacophony of beauty. This poem is called At the South Pasadena Library, and for my sister, Kate. Someone is recovering from being hit by a car and is blessing the Lord. Across the street, the poet writes furiously, I nap over a book. Once upon a time, there were 3 young girls. One fled along the rooftops of Manhattan. One walked the roads in Woodstock, New York. One tries every day to be worthy, like poems that arrive in sweatshirts of long-legged girls, or in the enormous roots of the sycamore. The trees say green, more green. The knees say, bind me, hold me in place. The heart says, more words. For my new hip, I had hip replacement surgery in September. So this is a poem for my new hip. At Kaiser, my physical therapist reassures me the pain is not a problem. It's due to my walking more. Increase gradually, but keep walking, she says. We work on exercises. I walk, holding in my stomach muscles. I climb stairs, push my leg against the wall. It all helps. Bethany helps. I don't need to call my surgeon. Do not need an x-ray. My scar looks fine. Just keep walking. I go home, happy for the support in all this aging. I call friends. My son Will is home safely from Mexico. We eat brisket for dinner. For Los Angeles, and this makes reference to a wonderful exhibit at the Getty Museum that left in January 2024. And it was an exhibit of the Prince of William Blake. It's an amazing exhibit. For Los Angeles, the marble of the Getty Museum shines in the fall sunlight. Elevators are where I need them in order to study the muscular bodies by William Blake, particularly the winged Satan outstretched over the body of Eve and the dark skirt on Hecate's knees. The images remain in my mind enormous, gorgeous. They come from the Tate in London and the Huntington in Pasadena, now here in this blessed corner gallery full of visions. Outside, the terrace of dazzling light, LA to the ocean. We walk slowly back to the first elevator, through the main plaza, and smooth trams down the hill to the parking lot. We drive across LA to Philippe's and have a French dip sandwich for lunch. And this last one is a poem after reading Kim Shuck. And this is for you, Harry. I first learned about Kim Shuck on Harry's Poetry Hour. She's an amazing poet. Also, she's a Cherokee. She's a registered Cherokee, and she also does incredible beadwork and weaving. So this is after reading Kim Shuck. A new voice to me, a continuous voice that sweeps down the street and up to the corn moon in one breath as I navigate my old body and its issues, going to get blood taken today, more tests, then home to watch our destructive ex-president in New York. All the sad corruptions and the strange conspiracies. But I love New Yorkers, always, how they whistle to drown out the crazies, their brash confidence. And I love the voices at Beyond Baroque, the voices on Harry's Poetry Hour, the voices of the continuum. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. Your poetry is always so enlightening and conscious. You have such those early poems, or from the letter you wrote, and then a couple of poems you wrote from Sunday. The love of your fellow poet, the camaraderie, the love of your family. I mean, in your poetry and what you read, just as in Eddie's, the personal and the poetry and the family history, and also, your love of birding, your love of nature, and the last couple of poems you wrote, your love of art about Blake, and then you're so giving to other people. You have such a generous heart, and there's a stateliness in your writing that I always love. So thank you, Phoebe, for that. Remarkable. You're a singular poet, and I just always like your sense of consciousness, to be redundant. But why don't I bring in Eddie? Why don't you come in and Phoebe and you can talk? We have about 6 minutes or so. Why don't you two have a long history in the poetry world. So why don't we start with Phoebe, say something about what you heard in Eddie's work or his family, whatever you like. And then after you get through, have Eddie talk a little bit about your poetry and you, so your journey. So here's Phoebe MacAdams.
Well, first of all, I love the short ones. I love the wit and the pithiness of those short poems. Those are wonderful. And the long poem just swept me away with memories. I mean, I can remember sitting on those stoops and, Gem Spa's gone. I cried when I found out that Gem Spa was gone. And I remember, we used to go for walks and, Ted would talk endlessly. And we'd stand on the street corner outside Gem Spa and talk. So, I mean, it's just, that's an amazing memory. And, that period of time was so incredible and so full of poets. Like you'd be sitting on the street corner and you're hailing all these poets who were walking by. It was an amazing time, and I loved hearing about it. And I have a question for you. What is the cow painting that's behind you?
It's, see if I can manage to get out of my own way here. It's, okay, so there's a story with that one. It's Andy Warhol poster from a show. I think it was at the MoMA in 1971, and it's actually signed to Dad. It says, "To Ted B, love Andy W."
Well, my ex-husband Louis had that same poster in his apartment during his final days. So I've been looking at that poster for a long time. So it's great to see that. So.
Well, apparently, so they had it, Mom and Dad had it hanging in their apartment in Chicago. And there was a poet named Steve Hamilton who knew them in Chicago and who also moved to New York. And one day in New York in 1978, Dad showed up with the poster rolled up under his arm and gave it to Steve in exchange for $500, which was to cover the rent. And then Dad never the rest of the transaction never happened. Dad passed away. And then a few years ago, just before COVID, this guy at the Poetry Project first handed a note to Anselm, and he didn't do anything about it because he was too busy. And then I think Mom got a note at some point. And then finally, there was a memorial reading for Bill Kushner, who's a friend of mine. And he was, he was an older gay poet, and he had a crush on me. So I thought at his memorial reading, I put on like a hot magenta shirt, and I put on some shades, and I read the sexiest, dirtiest gay that I could find, in homage. And then at the end, after the reading, an old guy came over and handed me a note, and I was like, oh, I guess it worked. But actually, it was Steve Hamilton offering to give the Andy Warhol back, and I finally went and met up with him. Yeah, and Eddie. So that's that story.
That's a great story.
It's funny thinking. What you say about that time period is true, and it seems special in a way. And the world has changed so much, especially recently, that it really truly feels like another time and another place. And, who knows? Thurston might have actually been watching Dad talk to you for all I know on the corner on Gem Spa.
Wow. What an incredible weave of connections.
Yeah. And I loved hearing you read. I mean, this is my first real exposure to your work, and I love the clarity. And I know, I knew all those people too, so it's just moving to hear it. And I love the story of the party. It's like following you along the party, and especially the part where, the end where the other folks are talking, and you just kind of drift away in the back of the car. It's like, I know that moment. Everybody knows that moment.
Well, you two are just fabulous. Phoebe, I think you had a phrase, something like in the appreciative breeze. Maybe it was somewhere in the letter that, and I feel that from both of you, a sense of appreciation, a sense of gratitude for, what you've been given. And gratitude and empathy are always key to me. And so it's just really been a real personal history document, you two, on this particular program. So I'm really thrilled that you were both here at the same time. And so thank you very much. And Phoebe MacAdams and Edmund Berrigan, Eddie, as I've been told you've been called by your friend, you're called by your friends, but thank you very much. And I'm going to make an announcement. Next week, we have two terrific writers with us, Amy Gersler and Kate Wiseman. So that'll be a wonderful reading. So thank you very much once again, Phoebe MacAdams and Eddie Berrigan.
Thank you, Harry, and thank you, Eddie. This was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise, and thanks for bringing us together, Harry.
Thank you.